Go. Okay.
Okay. Good to see you all. Shanka's our host today. He's already put up the prayers. So we're going to begin by words, trying to set a motivation verbally. And of course, what the efficacy of that depends on whether you've meditated on these concepts before, like taking refuge and generating bodhicitta. If you have, simply by recalling the words, you can bring back a remembering consciousness of those states of mind, like refuge and bodhicitta. If you haven't meditated on that well before, saying the words still has some benefit because it leaves an imprint in the mind to maybe say them again in the future or to encounter them. But the best thing is that you've meditated on the meaning of them. Okay, so we're going to begin. Sangye churang suki chognam la jangchu bardu dagni kapsuchi dagi chunyen gipe sognam ki drola penche sangye drupasho. I go for refuge until I am a Buddha, until I'm enlightened, Jangchu, Bodhi, to the Buddha, Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly, through the collections I create through listening to the Dharma or explaining the Dharma, in my case. May I become a Buddha in order to benefit migrators, migrating beings. Sangye chudang soki chognam la Jiangzhu badu dagni kapsu chi dagi chunin gipe sognam ki drola penche sangye drupasho. And then mandala offering, by offering this ground anointed with perfume and strewn with flowers. This is imagining the mandala base that one would begin. One anoints it with perfume and strews it with flowers before putting on the grains, but also imagining, if you imagine the ground of your mandala, imagine it as a pure land. So it is imagine it as fragrant and beautified with strewn flowers and so forth, adorned with Mount Meru, the four continents, the sun and the moon, representing essentially our solar system, and then multiplied in many times to other world systems with a sun and a moon and so forth. Visualized as a Buddha realm, may all migrators enjoy, by this, may all migrators enjoy a pure realm. And that's just below that, the request to our primordial guru, the Dharmakaya that has guided us in numberless lifetimes in the past. Doesn't have to be the mind stream of just one Buddha. O holy and perfect pure Lama, from the clouds of compassion that form the skies of your Dharmakaya wisdom, please send down, release a rain of vast and profound Dharma teachings, the vast meaning the teachings about conventional truth, the extensive deeds of the Bodhisattvas and so forth, the profound meaning the teachings on emptiness, precisely in accordance with the needs, the wishes of those to be trained. Idam Guru Radna Mandalakam Niryatayami. So in doing so, you think, having requested that way, whatever is taught, you think this coming from, the Dharmakaya in accordance with the needs, with my needs, even if it's not what you think you want, it's probably what you need. Okay, so we're going to begin with a little bit of meditation. Try to put these ideas into practice. So sit comfortably, relax your body and mind. Find your breathing, your respiration. Keep it in mind to the exclusion of other thoughts. If you're successful in being mindful of the breathing, you're implicitly letting go of the other distracting thoughts and attention to your body, things that you might hear and so forth. Then follow one breath up your nostrils as though it goes to the crown of your head, to the down to your throat chakra, your heart chakra. Let your attention abide there. Let go of your attention to the breathing and just watch your mental consciousness. What you're thinking. Thoughts, images, emotional states, they say anger, attachment, whatever, all like clouds in an otherwise clear sky, or like birds or leaves coursing through the sky. Take your attention away from the content and focus on the nature of the mind within which those thoughts are present. Not its ultimate nature. Its conventional nature is not obstructing the arisal of those thoughts, not being stained by those thoughts, images, emotional states. It's clear light nature. Our developmental Buddha nature. You could say our, without using the word conventional, you could say our Buddha nature, our potential to become a Buddha, because we're able to, because of this state, this reality, we're able to develop good qualities. We can get rid of our faults, but we have to put effort to do that. We have to apply antidotes to our faults. We have to use reasonings and experience to generate good qualities that are not already there. This conventional clear light nature of the mind is known by the eyes of wisdom and exalted wisdom, or you could say by prajna and jnana. The eyes, so that doesn't mean your third eye, some physical thing. It means the actual arisal of wisdom in these forms in your mind. It's not something, this clear light nature of the mind is not something that has a color or shape. It's not something that could be seen by the eye, but it's known by the mind. So the analogy is used as the eyes of wisdom, like Vajrayogini's third eye, or the third eye of many of the tantric deities, representing that. That we can perceive this and have some joy that we have this opportunity now, that we can develop good qualities, eliminate our faults, is due to this auspicious moment of having a human rebirth with these various qualities. 8 freedoms, 10 endowments, which the Buddha called an auspicious moment. It doesn't come very often. Very, very rare. Difficult to create the karma for, but we have it right now. Until we recognize its utility, we may waste the opportunity, this auspicious moment, on trivial pursuits, becoming, famous or powerful, accumulating wealth, or just being happy right now. Having food and drink and beer and chips and sex, or we can recognize that this life, this is special life we have right now, is impermanent. It won't be lasting long. Maybe we have a couple of decades, maybe in some of our cases, a couple of years, or in some cases, a couple of months or weeks to live. Energizing us to take the essence of this life. We can use it to find our own stable peace of nirvana, or to achieve enlightenment, or at least to create the karma, the familiarity, the karmic seeds and familiarity with realizations that can lead us to those states in the future. the reason for a Mahayanist to contemplate this is the awakening of compassion, the awakening of our Buddha nature, Buddha lineage rather, awakening of the Buddha lineage, the development of great compassion, thinking of other living beings as we think of ourselves, wanting them to be happy, wanting them to be free of suffering by the various meditations. You're recognizing them as having been our mother numberless times, or ornamented with a realization that they're exactly equal with us in wanting to be free of suffering, wanting to be happy. To identify with their goals by equalizing and exchanging ourselves with others, to develop bodhicitta. This thought to achieve enlightenment in order to bring about the alleviation of suffering of sentient beings and the setting them up into a stable, everlasting, blissful happiness. That's my goal. To do that, I need to have accumulated the collections of merit and wisdom, the causes, the substantial causes of the form and mental bodies of the Buddha, the Rupakaya and Dharmakaya. In order to skillfully do that quickly, I need to know the teachings. I need to know how to meditate. I need to know about the Dharma, which is going to be the subject matter of our course today. So thinking, okay, I have the opportunity of hearing the Dharma. I'm going to listen with that special motivation in mind, the wish to achieve enlightenment for the sentient beings, mother sentient beings. I'm going to listen, contemplate, meditate in order to achieve the collections, in order to become enlightened eventually for the sake of all sentient beings. I'm going to participate in order to become a Buddha for the sake of all living beings. And then bring your attention back to the present. Good to see you all again. Or to see some of you. Some of you are have your cameras off. Anyone have any questions left from before or comments, observations about meditation? Suvansh. You were unmuted for a second there, then you got muted again. There you go. Well, I can't hear you. Maybe your microphone's not connected. You're unmuted, but can't hear you. Okay. Okay, see if you can fix that. Stephen, you have a question.
Thank you, Venerable George, and good morning.
Good morning.
I have a question. Maybe it was 2 classes ago, we were talking about generosity and whether it could create throwing karma for rebirth with high status.
Right. That was Nadine's question, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And she gave a very interesting example about a little boy who offered the Buddha some sand thinking that it was gold dust. And he was later reborn because of that act. as King Ashoka. But we thought at that time, we said that it was because of the power of the object. So my question is, if that is so, could the practice of any perfection with a special object as the object of that practice, could that also result in throwing karma for high status? For example, taking one of the three jewels as the object, I don't know, maybe of patience. Maybe having patience and learning the Dharma.
Right. Good example. So the main cause of rebirth in the upper realms is morality, shila. We can call it ethics or morality, the second perfection, right? We're almost in the second mind generation. We're just finishing up the first mind generation, where the surpassing practice is the practice of generosity. So what does morality mean? Why is that the cause? The main, even when we talk about the Mahayana threefold morality, the primary one is abstaining from negative actions. And what that means is not just, given some tempting situation, like the piece of cream cheesecake on the table, that you restrain yourself from gobbling it up in deference to others, you restrain from some negative action. What it means is having a state of mind that has decided through analysis that all of these actions, the 10 paths of negative actions, sometimes we just say the 10 non-virtuous actions, but they're called the 10 paths of action, that they are something that are unseemly for us as a Buddhist, and making a firm determination not to go there ever. That can be enhanced by taking a vow, the pratimoksha vow of a lay persons, the lay vows, or the vows of a monk or nun, or that can be undertaken by taking the 24-hour precepts. Say in the Hinayana version, when you mainly are motivated by renunciation, or by the Mahayana 24-hour precepts, mainly motivated by bodhicitta. So though having that state of mind of morality, abstaining from negative actions, is the main cause. So if you have that state of mind, virtuous actions that you do could result in rebirth in the upper realms if they are strong, if they are complete, if there's a complete path of action. There's an object and a motivation and a virtuous state of mind. The action is completed, and so forth. That can create throwing karma. If within your mind stream there is that state of morality as its basis. Without that, you could still create throwing karma through the side of the object, and say, like the little boy, I can't remember what his name in the Jataka tales, it tells the name, the previous life of Ashoka, where he dropped the sand into the Buddha's begging bowl, imagining it as gold. Maybe good motivation, but just having a good motivation, of generosity may not be enough. One needs to have that a mind of morality, like Nagarjuna quoted from the Buddhist teachings, from ethics, from morality, high rebirth, from generosity, resources. So generally, generosity gives the completing karma of having resources in future lives. That action, if it happens to be conjoined with morality, it could be a double whammy. So like Ashoka got the double whammy of being, the little boy got the double whammy of creating the karma to be born as a human being, as a king in high status, and with great wealth and power, able to dictate that 100,000 stupas could be, mandating 100,000 stupas have to be created for the Buddha, just in one command, having that kind of power and resources and so forth. So in general, just say, if you have compassion for someone and you do something to assuage their suffering, that might be a weak kind of cause of throwing karma. If it was really authentically felt compassion, but generally you need to have a state of mind that is renouncing, that has a state of mind that does not want to engage in negative actions to create the throwing karma. Does that make sense to you? Okay. Suvash, did you get your?
Yeah. Okay. So now you can hear me?
Okay. Yes, we can hear you. Yeah.
Okay. Venerable George, in the interim, since last week.
Say again, what was it?
I was just saying that in the interim, since last week.
Oh, in the interim. Okay.
Yeah, interim. I was listening to teachings by Bhikkhu Bodhi. Bhikkhu Bodhi teaches on the, he's the translator of the Pali Canon, and he hit upon a topic that we had discussed in the last class, which is what you were just discussing with Stephen.
Right.
And so I thought that I will briefly mention that it happens to be on the topic of causes and conditions that certain states of being that what are the causes and conditions. So for example, he is asked, so in the Madhyamaka Nikaya, Sutta number 135 is called the shorter imposition of action. Okay. He is asked by a Brahmin about mundane things like long life, health, wealth, beauty, intelligence. Okay. And so in that shorter discourse, the Buddha gives very precise or more precise, I guess, teachings on what causes and conditions lead to health, wealth, beauty. And right. I think what I found is that most of them you could probably guess, but sometimes there are surprises.
Yeah. So is that a question or is this a statement?
Just sharing with you. That's it.
Yeah. So when we were at Kopan in the early years, when I say that the Inji Sangha, the Western Sangha, and Lama Yeshe said he wanted to give a discourse on karma from one of these teachings of the Buddha gave about karma. But he said lay people couldn't come, only the Sangha. And why is that exclusionary? He said that generally the Sangha have some faith in karma. So when the Buddha said, if you go fishing, if you catch fish with a hook, you can be born with a, what do they call it, hair lip, cleft palate or something like that, various things. He said, generally, unless you have faith in karma, faith in the Buddha, just the Buddha saying these things, you'll just, the Buddha could say whatever he wants, like as though he's just making things up. So, the Buddha, in talking about negative karma, the Buddha explained various things to avoid, because they would have negative repercussions. In terms of positive karma, like wealth, health, and so forth, virtuous actions that would bring those about. So that's, if you don't have faith in karma, if you don't have faith in the Buddha as being an omniscient being, you might just ignore those. But hopefully as aspiring Buddhists, hopefully as aspiring Mahayanas, we would have some faith in the Buddha's teachings about those. Okay. So anyone else have a comment, question they wanted to catch up on? Thanks, Suvash. You put in the note there which sutta to look at. Okay. So if no questions, I'm going to continue. So last time we were talking about this etymology of the word paramita. So it's sound kind of dry sounding kind of stuff. You'd think you'd like to talk about more tasty things, but these are the dry bones that we warned about. And I mentioned that later we will also talk about the etymology of pratitya samutpada. And Snehi, do you remember what pratitya samutpada means? Maybe you didn't catch up on the past classes. You know what pratitya samutpada is?
First, a dependent arising. Right.
And in the Mahayana, it has a greater meaning than the general Hinayana interpretation as phenomena arising due to causes and conditions. And so it is, in a sense, things that are, if something is a dependent arising, it is necessarily empty of inherent existence. And so that the etymology of that comes up later. So right now we're just talking about the simpler version of paramita. We talked about the rule that Chandrakirti brings up called prisodara. When you take para, meaning over there, or in some cases you could say the other shore, something over there, and ita, which is another, is a past participle of another verb, to go, not the one like gate, like in the Heart Sutra, when we talk about gate, parasamgate, bodhisoda, soha, gone beyond, gone completely beyond bodhi. That verb is a different verb than ita, but ita is also, let me see here, lost a view of the gallery. There we go. So we talked about why the M sound is put after para, is like the accusative case, and there is an ending coming after ita that is erased or deleted. That's what Chandrakirti explained. So it becomes para ita, but there's an M in between, so paramita. And where we ended last time was with this statement, Lama Tsong Khapa mentioning at the end of that, the nominative ending su given here seems to be incorrect. So check whether this should be C instead. So that this was in regard to Jayananda's commentary on Chandrakirti. Jayananda was a commentator, right? The Sanskrit commentator. The Buddhist Cultural Center monk there. How do you say Jayananda? Do you know who Jayananda was? Can you speak? Okay, maybe not. Jayananda was the Sanskrit commentator on Lama Tsongkhapa. So Lama Tsongkhapa gives his commentary and says that's not exactly what Chandrakirti said, and so we're going to continue from there. So in Thupten Jinpa's translation of Gompa Rapsel, so we have some Tibetans assert that from the Sanskrit word param, ita, the anusvara atop ra is placed alongside on the same row, which then results in parama ita. And when the sandhi rule is applied to this, the vowel I is given to the letter ma, and when the vowel a is erased, it assumes the form mita. This is Thupten Jinpa's translation of the Tibetan. There seem to be many confused explanations such as this. However, the explanation offered by the Pandita cited above seems to be best. And the Pandita cited above is Chandrakirti. So Jeffrey Hopkins' translation of that phrase says, there appear to be many explanations by Tibetans which are fabrications of the darkness of mind, such as in the language of India, that means in Sanskrit, paramita, which is param ita, the anusvara is placed in file. So both of them uses some kind of word meaning here. Deldu, one translates as file and one says on top of or something. Do you know what an anusvara is? Rachel, do you know what anusvara is?
Venerable George, I think it's the drop, at the top, like when you have the letter, isn't it the circle?
That's one application. Like say, for instance, if you have hu, if you have the little anusvara above, it becomes hum, right? What does the Tibetans say? Do they say hum or do they say hum? Sheila, do you say omani padme hum or do you say omani padme hum? Sheila?
Hum.
Now when Tempa is saying hum. Now what are you saying? Should be what? Hum?
Hum.
Like NG at the end.
Yeah. Hum. A-N-G.
So some people say so hum. Generally, if you listen to the Dalai Lama's reciting the mantra, maybe it sounds more like hum, H-U-M. So that anusvara is a substitute for the letter M in general. It can be a nasal sound in some circumstances if the next word happens to be a guttural sound. But in general, if it's just by itself, like when you talk about hum, omani pemi hum, so that little circle above that, in general, in a general sentence, in not just talking about mantra, there may be certain circumstances when the letter M is represented by this anusvara above the last letter, and it sounds like an M sound in that case. That's what's being talked about here in paramita. The M is represented by the anusvara. So when as Jeffrey says, when it is compounded, the vowel sign of I, the gigu, over A, as is written in Tibetan. So to represent the letter I, you would have the letter A, or A, with a gigo above it, which represents the letter I, is added to M, and the letter A is erased, leaving mita. However, the pundit's explanation is that stated above. So I'm not going to go into more detail about that. This is talking about the rules of Panani and Kapila, other Sanskrit grammarians, how they, the various rules of Sanskrit, how to create a compound like that. So we're going to just leave it like that. Para and ita, there's an M sound in between because of some grammatical rules, also because it's kind of like the accusative. It can be the accusative case. So let's go on from there. The two lines beginning, generosity devoid of the gift, receiver, and giver, take the wisdom realizing the three elements of giving to be imperceptible as a point of reference, and indicates how generosity sustained by it is an instance of the perfection of generosity. Sometimes I think for my own mind, Thupten Jinpa's translations leave me a little bit confused. Here's how Jeffrey translates that same. In Tibetan, it says for Nawan Tempa. Nawan Tempa, do you have Gompa Rapsel in front of you, the Tibetan? Yeah. Okay. It says Jimpa Jinja She.
Yeah.
Jimpa Jinja Shepe Kangpa Niki Korsum Mimikpa Tokpe Sherab Zune De Zimpe Jimpe Cha Parchin Chedaktu Shepa Yinde. So Jeffrey translates this. These two lines in Chandrakirti's text specify the wisdom cognizing the three spheres. We say korsum. So we've talked about the three spheres before when we've talked about dedicating merits within the emptiness of the three spheres. Remember, different ways that you can take the three spheres. You can say, for instance, you can talk about yourself as the dedicator, the merits that are being, or let's say the merits that are being dedicated, the object that is being dedicated to, let's say enlightenment for the sake of sentient beings, and the act of dedication. Or in the case of giving, here it says Jimpa Jinja. Jimpa means giving, and Jinja means that which is to be given. So Jeffrey translates, these two lines in Chandrakirti's root text specify the wisdom cognizing the three spheres of giver, gift, and receiver to be unapprehendable as inherently existent entities, and explains the specific perfection of giving which is conjoined with that wisdom. So what's this talking about? So generally, when we perform any of the perfections, they all have to be conjoined with wisdom. And of course, they should be conjoined with all the other perfections, like we talked about before. You can talk about the generosity of generosity, the morality of generosity, the patience of generosity, the enthusiasm of generosity, the concentration of generosity, the wisdom of generosity. So particularly the wisdom is let's say something that has to be appended in all cases. And that means realizing that phenomena and actions are empty of inherent existence. So in the case of giving, you know, let's say you're giving a cup of a bowl of food to a beggar, someone who's hungry. So you have to recognize that the object that you're giving is empty of inherent existence. So you have to have trained beforehand in meditating on emptiness of, let's say, physical phenomena. You have to recognize that the recipient, the person, the beggar or the hungry person, doesn't exist the way they appear. Someone that you could, develop anger or attachment toward, but they're actually empty of inherent existence. They're merely imputed to their five aggregates. And the act of giving itself, where does that, you might feel pride about having given, but giving itself as an action can't be found anywhere. It's just a name that you impute to the continuity of motion, the continuity of, first of all, having the thought of giving, putting your hand out with the bowl of food toward the other person, them taking it from you, and so forth. All three of them are empty of inherent existence. If you were to be in single-pointed meditation, equipoise on emptiness, you wouldn't be able to give, right? You would, your senses would all be withdrawn. So you have to have a remembering consciousness of that while you're giving. So again, Jimpus says the two lines beginning generosity devoid of gift, receiver, and giver. So receiver is the recipient, the gift is the object that you're giving, and here he says the giver. So the different ways of dividing these three things together. Take the wisdom realizing the three elements of giving to be imperceptible as a point of reference and indicates how generosity sustained by it is an instance of the perfection of generosity. Does that sound complicated? Toby, are you getting the gist of this? Okay, I know that mudra. Okay. KT?
I think trying to fuse the wisdom of the emptiness within our generosity actions. As
Right.
Myself and the receiver and the gift itself, and really trying to find that within the three spheres is what we're trying to achieve here.
Right. So, what to say? Giver, gift, and receiver. So they're both taking a giver, gift, and receiver, recipient, as the three. Sometimes you can say the action itself as one of them. So an act of giving, of generosity, would not constitute a supramundane perfection if it's devoid of this wisdom that sees the emptiness of these three spheres. It would just be called a mundane perfection. So here, the text continues. Other instances of perfections, such as generosity, that are not sustained by this wisdom, are still called perfections because they are similar to those perfections sustained by wisdom. For example, an instance of generosity may not be sustained by wisdom. Maybe it's not sustained by wisdom, but because it is sustained by dedication to great awakening, to enlightenment. You're giving it with a thought that in so doing, may you become enlightened in order to benefit sentient beings. It is accepted as certain to go beyond. What does that mean, go beyond? Don, do you know what that means? Is certain to go beyond? Go beyond what?
I think eventually, I mean, you'll eventually go to the super mundane, giving a go beyond to the other shore, maybe.
Yeah, eventually it'll bring you to enlightenment because you're dedicating it. One of the advantages of dedication is that unless it is the merit that you've accrued is destroyed by anger, making a conventional dedication, that it may this lead to my eventual enlightenment, that karma won't be lost, won't be burned up until it won't become totally, used up until you achieve enlightenment. It will have greater and greater effects. Ordinary dedication, say to enlightenment, without the wisdom that realizes emptiness, will that be protected from anger? Anna, do you know? If you dedicate your merits to enlightenment, but you haven't necessarily dedicated them within the emptiness of the three spheres, are they protected from being destroyed by anger?
I'm going to say no, because I think anything with, if you're not seeing the emptiness of it, then anger wouldn't arise. I think there's a connection there. If you really understood conceptually, I think on emptiness,
Right.
then I'm thinking that the dedication is more pure towards enlightenment as opposed to I just know anger does destroy merit, so I'm trying to.
Yeah. So here's the thing. Generally, and this will come up in the third mind generation, or as they say, the third Bhumi chapter that's coming up after morality. If you dedicate your merits to enlightenment, they won't be lost. They won't be used up until you achieve enlightenment, but they could still be destroyed by anger if you dedicate them within the emptiness of the three spheres. So this is like a double dedication. You're dedicating them to enlightenment within the emptiness of the three spheres. They will also be protected from being destroyed by anger. So that will come up later. There'll be discussion in that chapter. So that's what's being talked about here. Let's see. This where do we say here? For example, an instance of generosity might not be sustained by wisdom, but because it is sustained by dedication to great awakening, it is accepted as certain to go beyond, that it will eventually lead to enlightenment with a proviso that it's not destroyed by anger. So it is suitable to be called a perfection of wisdom, a perfection of giving. It's not, you would say that it is a mundane perfection of wisdom. Okay. Richard, you following?
Yes, I believe so.
Okay. Thus, with respect to the etymological meaning of the word perfection, paramita, or gone beyond, you don't have to say perfection. You can say, to the practice of going beyond. If it is read as gone beyond to that state in terms of the accusative case, the word refers to having arrived at the ground of Buddhahood. So, where are you going to that state, to that other shore of Buddhahood? If the word is read as going beyond by means of this, in terms of the instrumental case, then perfections exist even on the learner's path. Generally in paramita, it's the accusative case. So it's generally talking about actual perfection is going to the state of Buddhahood. Remember we talked about the accusative case? Anyone remember? JC, you're still here. What would be the instrumental case? What would that mean when it says going beyond by means of this?
I'm sorry, what would that mean?
Well, etymologically, Chandrakirti is taking the M between para and ita to mean accusative. So that seems to be the general meaning is going to Buddhahood. But you could talk about paramita or parutujimpa as going by means of this. What is by means of what?
By means of the korsum mimikpa, I guess.
Well, let's say, read what Jeffrey said. When the meaning of perfection is applied to the object, the beyond to which one goes, which is using the accusative case, it refers to Buddhahood to which one progresses. When it is taken as the means by which one goes beyond, the perfection is the way that you go beyond. The perfections occur even on the paths of learning. So we would say that there are practices. You wouldn't say that there's the actual perfection of generosity or any of the perfections until you achieve Buddhahood. That's the actual perfection. But you can talk about practices of the perfections on the Bodhisattva path beforehand. So Lama Tsongkhapa then continues, this explanation I've offered here in relation to generosity should be understood in the context of the other perfections as well, such as for the perfection of morality and so on. So, the explanations that he's talked about here. In other words, those other instances also contain both kinds. Those sustained by the awakening mind alone, and by the awakening mind and by dedication alone, and those that are sustained by wisdom as well. So you can talk about, practice of the perfections. My electricity is going on and off. I haven't been knocked off the computer yet. You can talk about these mundane perfections without the application of the emptiness of the three spheres as being called perfections, because they get you eventually to that goal, but the, what does it say? And those that are sustained by wisdom as well, because you definitely have to have the dedication to enlightenment as a bodhisattva when you're doing these actions. If you have the wisdom that knows it as well, then it becomes a supramundane perfection. Shanka, what are you thinking?
I have to say, this logic, it seems a little creative to me. Yeah. Because if I studied Sandhi and Samas in school in India, right? And Parama is a word, in Sanskrit word, that means highest, most excellent, like Parama Mangala means the highest good or highest virtue.
Right. So para and parama are different words. So parama is derived from para.
And then I get to my second point, which is in Sandhi, para and ita don't make paramita, like maha and ishwara becomes maheshwara. So it would have become parameta. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So the Sandhi is not right.
So you're arguing with Chandrakirti and Lama Tsongkhapa about.
Well, I don't know if Chandrakirti said this, but I'm arguing with Lama Tsongkhapa.
Okay, so you agree with what Chandrakirti said?
I don't know. I didn't read. I missed the
Okay,
last.
So Lama Tsongkhapa was paraphrasing Chandrakirti. Chandrakirti was saying by this Pisodara rule that the final addition to ita is elided, but the accusative case M is not elided.
I guess I'm arguing with I guess I'm arguing with Chandrakirti then, because the Sandhi doesn't make sense to me, but at least that's what the grammar that I studied. So yeah.
So for those of you who don't know, what do you know? Does anyone else besides Shankar know what Sandhi means? I think John has already disappeared. Rachel, what does Sandhi mean?
I believe from the little tiny bit I know, it's how you put words together and what happens after certain endings, what happens when you put the words together, how you combine those words and what gets omitted and what stays.
Right. So some of it has to do with how harmonious things sound. I should have asked Snehi. Snehi, how would you explain about Sandhi? Rules of
pretty much what Rachel said, but I think it's also like if you have two vowels, if you have a word ending with a vowel and another word beginning with a vowel, how do the two go together? And then Sandhi rules come into place.
Right. And there are other kinds of situations with certain syllables. So say, for instance, in English, do we have anything similar in English? Do you know? Anyone?
Contractions.
Contractions, maybe, yeah. But let's say, can you say, I'm going to give you an apple? What do you have to say? I mean, maybe someone here in North Carolina might say, I'm going to give you an apple.
An apple.
An apple. It depends on, what comes after the particle a, right? So that's kind of like English Sandhi. Depends on, someone might say, a apple is okay, but it doesn't sound right to the ear. So the rules of Sandhi, combining words together, has to do with euphony, how things sound. Snehi, what are you thinking?
I'm actually a bit lost with this discussion of the accusative case and instrumental case. Like, why is it important?
Yeah. So, you might try to understand, what does the word paramita mean? If you look up in the Sanskrit dictionary, you could find the word paramita, which means gone to the other shore or perfection. But how did that word come about? So this is talking about the etymology of it. And as I mentioned before, etymologies will become very important when you talk about pratitya samutpada, what it actually means, to refute the Hinayana idea of what pratitya samutpada means. So I agree, this may seem like a diversion from practice, like how is this applicable to my practice? But this kind of understanding will be, is useful here in understanding what paramita means. The param is actually para, and the M sound is the accusative. So your ita, you're gone to the accusative case, the other, to the other shore. Okay, so let's not beat that dead dog anymore. Okay.
But since we're on the topic.
Yes, yeah, okay, beat that dog some more, come on.
What does the instrumental case get me? Like, I understand the accusative is like saying, okay, you're going in the direction of becoming a Buddha. What does the instrumental case do for me?
If you're, so there are different, I'm not quite sure what is meant here, because generally the M is not a instrumental case ending, right? Between para and ita. So when he's talking about instrumental, it may mean an instrumental by means of coming after paramita. So an ending after the ita, which is elided, which is, say, erased and doesn't show up. So I'm not quite sure what the implication is there, other than the fact that it's talking about, if you talk about the paramitas as going to the state of enlightenment, or the paramitas as being that by which you approach enlightenment. But the subtlety of that, I don't quite grasp myself. So as I said, let's leave that dog, that corpse there. Okay. So Lama Tsongkhapa said that you can use the same explanation in terms of the other perfections, such as morality and so forth. Then the next paragraph begins, but when attachment or clinging to true existence arises for these three elements of giving, right? If one is fettered by clinging to true existence of the gift, the receiver, and the giver, these three spheres, this generosity is then said in the sutras to be a mundane perfection. So if it's not conjoined with the wisdom realizing emptiness, it's called a mundane perfection. The actual Tibetan is not exactly as Thupten Jinpa has translated it here. Let's see here. So Jeffrey Hopkins translates this on his page 190, just after verse 16 CD. He says, Sutra teaches, so that comes at the end of Jinpa's sentence where he says, is said in the sutras to be. Sutra teaches that giving is called a mundane perfection when one is bound through having generated attachment, which is an adherence to the true existence of the three spheres of giving. So this word adherence is missing in Thupten Jinpa's translation. He calls it clinging. Adherence is a Tibetan word shenpa, which means a very strong, well, let's say, for instance, when we talk about grasping, true grasping to a self of persons, it can mean an adherence to what is appearing to your mind. You know, like the I is appearing to your mind as being inherently existent, right? What does it mean to grasp to that? It means to go along with it, to adhere to that, to have no doubts about it, to believe that the self is inherently existence. So adherence is a particular stronger way of saying grasping. Jeffrey says, Sutra teaches that giving is called a mundane perfection if or when one is bound or fettered, this is Tibetan word chingba, through having generated attachment, or chakpa, which is an adherence to the true existence of the three spheres of giving. So if you are believing in them, if you are adhering to them as though they existed the way that they appeared, that is called a mundane perfection. Even though you're dedicating it to enlightenment, as with a bodhisattva ideal, if you are still clinging to these, if you are adhering to them as being truly existent or inherently existent, that's called a mundane perfection. Okay? Making sense? Okay. So then Lama Tsongkhapa continues, but when attachment or clinging to true existence arises for these three elements of giving, if one is fettered, I read that already. If one is fettered by clinging to true existence, the gift, the giver, and the receiver, this generosity is said in the sutras to be a mundane perfection. So then he continues, here is how what has been explained above can be practiced right now from this very moment. Okay, so practical advice, leaving sandhi and all of these other things, letting them go. To give away your body to others and generate extraordinary joy in doing so. In order to do that, train first by taking it as an object of imaginative cultivation. Whereas Jeffrey says, with respect to putting into practice now the features explained above, you should, through imagination, train in giving your own body to others and in the special ways of generating joy. So this is, for instance, when we talk about Tonglen, imagine sending out your body that becomes like a wish-fulfilling jewel that transforms into whatever sentient beings need, whether they need food or a companion, a doctor, a helper. So your body, imagine, and in so doing, with that kind of imagination, feeling joy that sentient beings will utilize that and get closer to their state of liberation and enlightenment. So you feel joy about that. You practice doing that again and again. As for other forms of generosity, such as giving material things, so that the giving of the body you do at the beginning, you do just in imagination. Or if you're like Lama Zopa Rinpoche, as I mentioned before, allowing the mosquitoes to drink his blood, you can actually do that now, but you're not actually giving away your body so that you die, unless you happen to get malaria, maybe. As for other forms of generosity, such as giving material things, cultivate these in relation to the fields of giving, both to those of elevated status and to the lowly on a regular basis, through such acts as offering even simple things like water. So what does that mean? Who can I ask? Toby, do you know what that means?
Thank you, Venerable George.
No, you're welcome.
The regular act of giving water as an offering.
So that means like when you're out in the watching the softball game, offering water to the other people who are thirsty?
Or to your deity of choice?
Oh, yeah. So, for instance, even though we may not have any, we may not have a lot of resources, you can offer to the merit field, the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, the deities and so forth, the Lamas, bowls of water, because, let's say, to the Buddha, would that be considered, sort of an inferior offering? Would the Buddha experience pleasure, some extraordinary pleasure in drinking the water that experiencing the water that you offer, Sheila?
I would imagine it has to do with your intention, like you mentioned the boy who gave sand and as an offering for gold.
Right. Well, the Buddha's experience of that didn't enter into it. Even the Buddha's, it was just went into his bowl, right? But say if you offer bowls of water to the merit field, imagining the omniscient mind is experiencing these. Does the omniscient mind experience that with pleasure or indifference?
I would think with pleasure.
Yeah, let's say if you offer hay to a lion, I'm sure hearing an echo. If you offer hay to a lion, the lion is not going to experience that with any special pleasure. So they just sit there, is not interested in hay.
Oh, I wonder if his power just went out, or
Yeah, he froze, yeah.
yeah. Let me call him. Oh, well, his cell phone might work. Let me try. So Venerable said that his power went off, but then it came back. So his router is restarting. So it takes about 3 minutes. So be patient. So there you go.
Thank you.
Somebody can tell us about what's an accusative case and what's an instrumental case, because I don't know.
An instrumental case is what you put your guitar in.
Oh, that's very good.
So the third case is indicates agent, instrument, or reason. So it's like the same. It's like a post positional indicator. There's no punctuation, so they use these case markers. And the same case marker can be 3 different things. So the instrument means by means of, which means that it's the instrument by which you get there. So in this case, the way that you can get to enlightenment is by means of the perfection of generosity or any other perfection. So then that's the instrumental, and the accusative. I'm not remembering the whole list, but it's in this case, the accusative case is indicating where you're going to. So sometimes it's accusing you of something, but here it's accusing the place you're going to. So it's marking where you're going. So those are different cases in Sanskrit and in Tibetan, and it's so what I'm understanding is the ma is the accusative, and the instrumental was at the end of paramita, but is no longer seen, and so you're saying you're going by means of going to the other shore, by means of, I don't know, something like that.
So
it's a little tricky.
Is it possible that the point is that the word paramita has both an instrumental and an accusative meaning, and therefore giving in both ways, in both means, both in terms of arriving with the perfection of generosity as a Buddha, and also giving on the path to going to a Buddha are both perfections. Isn't that, is it possible that that's what it means? Something like that?
But I thought Venerable George said that it was only the accusative case that was correct. And so I think the accusative case is going to what? It's the direct object. That's the state of enlightenment. And that's where that M, that sound, if you use the accusative case, you insert the M. And so that's correct. Whereas I thought he said for the instrumental case, by means of, it's incorrect, because I think the illogical conclusion would be someone on the learner's path would also have that. And that's the part where I'm just like, all right, and like, why is that the case? Okay, I'm still trying to work that out. But I think that's why, if my understanding is correct, it's only the accusative case that is correct for the Mahayana path.
Got it. Thanks.
My guess, my understanding based on what he said.
All I remember when studying Sanskrit in India was that I just had those conjugations of verbs, like there were like 12 or 14 cases and they were in rows. And then there was, then they have, even in first person, it's like two of us, there's two of us, and then there's, plural, right? So we, two of us, and then plural. So there was 3 columns and 14 or 15 rows. She had to like memorize 45 things for every type of verb. And I decided to forget all of it when I left.
Just to let you know, I'm sorry I'm laughing, so I want to share. So Venerable, I just told Venerable that there's a discussion about the accusative, etc. He sent me an emoji of a dog, which means that we're beating the dog.
He's very creative with emojis, I found.
Oh, I know. There's 21 new ones.
Sorry to bring in the dog, but I'm wondering if, so if we have the instrumental case, right? And then Lama Tsongkhapa said, if you use the instrumental case, you would have sort of, I assume, the absurd conclusion that it would, the perfection would apply in the learner's path. I'm thinking what he means is, well, it's not a perfection because you're still learning on the learner's path. You're not a Buddha, so you can't call it a perfection, and therefore it's not the instrumental case. Therefore, it has to be the accusative case because it is a perfection, and it refers to, the actual state of Buddhahood. Anyway,
But we practice the perfections, and so it's kind of one way or another we're beating the dog. It's like we're going to call it something, and we're calling it a perfection, even though we're not perfect at it, because we're practicing it. So I don't know.
No, I think that's right. I think that's what he said, right? In the instrumental case, you practice it. It's called the practice of the perfection. But for paramita, the perfection itself, it must be the accusative case because it's the direct object. You go to the state of enlightenment. That is the perfect state. So maybe that makes sense. Woof.
I'll have to ask Louis. He's in the other room. That being my dog, who's quite alive, thank goodness.
I've got a few of them lying on the floor over here, so.
I like your background, Shankar. It looks so bright.
Yeah, well, at 7,000 feet, and any kind of sun is very bright.
Where are you, Shankar?
I'm in Santa Fe, New Mexico.
Oh, lovely town.
Yeah,
But you have those big, beautiful windows.
Yeah, it's a sunroom, so yeah, it's and the house is passively heated and cooled, so it helps a lot. The sunroom does in the winter. But I'm still having trouble with this paramita business, and the reason is that there is a word already called parama. Param is, most excellent, the highest, most perfect, the most dear. It's everywhere in Sanskritic languages. So to try to make gone beyond and all this other stuff out of that word is just kind of strange to me. But anyway, it's another thing.
And Stephen, how do you like being in Bhutan? I love your background. It always inspires me every time I see it.
Did anyone read the article in the Facebook about the donation of the guy who gave his kidney and lied to his wife? And if you did, what did you think about it and his generosity or mundane generosity, or what was that? What was that all about? Like, what if you read it?
I started it. I got to the point where he said that not giving a kidney was murder, and I realized that I didn't have that level yet.
I was completely amazed about this article. I read the following pages. There are so many interesting thoughts there. Really amazing. And it came to my mind how stingy I am. It's really incredible.
I felt there were a number of ethical dilemmas coming up then as the article unfolded.
So Venerable says he has reset the modem, so it might still take a couple of more minutes. By the way, so since we were talking about Lama Zopa and so here in Santa Fe, Geshe Zopa from Australia, he's been teaching, right? He was teaching for a month. He just left. And so he had some really, really, really funny stories about Lama Zopa. And one of them was that, well, there's one that takes half an hour. I'm not going to go into that one. You can listen to the audio, but it was for half an hour about trying to get from one place to another and how long it took. But but the one that's really funny is that he was talking about how when he was a young monk at Kopan, and he was one of the attendants of Lama Zopa. And so he would kind of, like he didn't believe that Lama Zopa really, didn't sleep and just meditated all night and did his prayers and all this other stuff. So he would kind of like, would like finish his work at 11 to see how he was doing, how Lama Zopa was doing, and Lama Zopa was in his seat meditating. And then he would come in at like 3 a.m. He would have an alarm, and he would come to see what Lama Zopa was he really, meditating or really sleeping, And he would come in at 3 and he was still meditating. And then he would come in at 5 and he was still meditating. And then he goes, well, maybe he's sleeping in between. So then one night there's a window around, above in Lama Zopa's room above Kopan, right? So he was on the balcony rather. So he was on the balcony and he was looking in through the window, to see, is he really, because he stayed up all night to kind of just looking through the window at like 2 a.m. or 3 a.m, whatever. And he's just kind of like peered his head, and Lama Zopa is like sitting there, and he just didn't even open his eye. He goes, "Hey, Zopa!" So anyway, and he jumped out of his shoes. He said. So anyway, so yeah, so he really doesn't sleep. So that was he proved to him in his mind. Also, if you didn't know, the Light of the Path retreat in Nepal at Kopan, the registration opened this morning, last night, whenever it was. So if you want to register.
When I was at Geshe Sopa's summer course one year, Lama Zopa was there, and someone had found this mouse that there were these cats in the forest that they were trying to get us to catch. And so we could find families for them and get them out of the forest. But one of them had gotten this mouse. And so everyone, I mean, it looked like it was dead. I mean, they had it in this little box with some cotton and had taken it around the stupa a couple of times, and we're just going to wait till Lama Zopa passed through to bless it before they buried it. And Lama Zopa came up and did some mantras, and the thing jumped out of the box and ran away.
The other story that Geshe Zopa had was that they were in Lama's, like the cave in Laudo, and they were up there in the cave, and this was when Geshe Zopa, this was relatively, like 10 years ago maybe, or something like that, before his stroke. And they were supposed to go down to Namche Bazaar, and then from, and from there to Delhi, because they had a plane to catch to the US or something like that. And, it's supposed to, the story is hilarious, but the short version is, it's supposed to take in a normal day, like 3 hours on the goat trail from Laudo Cave to Namche Bazaar. And from Namche Bazaar, like a few hours of drive to wherever, and then take a plane to Delhi, right? So all of, so they had to take the plane the next day. But Rinpoche, as he does, he got stuck doing all these dedications and all these, everywhere. So everywhere he went, even on the goat trail, he would stop for every animal in the middle of the night. This was like they were trekking through the middle of the night now because he'd gotten so delayed. So they walked for 24 hours. And I love Geshe Zopa said, we were just so tired. We would just take breaks every couple of hours, and we just lie down and we just sleep. Like we would just put our backpacks on the ground, on the muddy ground, because it was raining and it's misty. And we're all wet. And there were muddy ground, and they would lie on their backpacks. And Rinpoche would just sit down and do his prayers and and bless all the animals in the forest and all this other stuff. And he just kept going for 24 hours or 36 hours, whatever it was, until they got on the plane. So it's it's a really amazing story. Anyway, I don't know if Venerable is, maybe his router just, like got zapped by the gray, the gray, what do you call it? Gray, not blackouts, but the grayouts,
I think they're having some pretty good storms back there, so they could have lost power, I guess.
Well, he did, but he said it came back, and so he was restarting his router, but that was like 15 minutes ago, I think.
Yeah, if it was an intermittent thing, it
wait, he's calling.
might have gone out again.
So Venerable says that even though power, anyway, even though power is, well, the power went out again and the internet's not working anyway, even with power. So he said, we'll continue next week. So do you want to finish with the dedications then? Let's just finish real quick. At least we can just dedicate and then. So we'll just do this. Due to the merits of these virtuous actions, may I quickly attain the state of a Guru Buddha and lead all living beings without exception into that enlightened state. May the supreme jewel bodhicitta that has not arisen arise and grow, and may that which has arisen not diminish, but increase more and more. And then you who uphold the Muni's moral code, serving as a bountiful bearer of all, sustaining, preserving, and spreading Manjunath's victorious doctrine, masterfully accomplishing magnificent prayers honoring the three jewels, Savior of myself and others, your disciples, please, please live long. Eyes viewing all the infinite scriptures, supreme gateway for the fortunate traveling to liberation, engaging with skillful means moved by love, all illuminating spiritual friends, please live a long and stable life. Okay, well, thank you very much. See you next week.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Ciao, ciao.
Shaka.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye all.
Thank you. Bye.